For those of you that are just joining me on YouTube, my name is Dr. Tina Yang, and I'm a Chinese medicine doctor and licensed acupuncturist, the founder of Revive Chi Health and Fertility Center. I am so excited to share that I recently released my new book called The Fertility Healing Journey. And it's a compilation of my clinical experience and the work that I've done with patients for over 25 years. And as a special gift, we'll be giving away a downloadable meditation from the book called the Spirit Baby Heart and Uterus Connection Meditation. And the reason why I wanted to do this Q&A session today is because June is Infertility Awareness Month, and I really wanted to honor this month and really help support patients that are going through their fertility journey. And questions that can be asked during this session is anything about optimizing your fertility with acupuncture, Chinese medicine, or functional medicine. So whether you're going through IVF or IUI, or you're just starting the process and in the beginning of your journey, I hope that this session will be helpful for you. And you can ask any questions in regards to topics like optimizing sperm and egg quality, regulating your hormones and menstrual cycles, supporting implantation and pregnancy outcomes, and how can acupuncture affect and support IVF and IUI treatments. So anything is open for asking. So I know that I've prepared actually a couple questions that I recently have received from my patients. Some of the common questions can be things like, how can acupuncture help improve fertility naturally? And this is such a great question. I think acupuncture and Chinese medicine works on so many different levels. And the main thing about acupuncture is that it helps to increase blood flow to the uterine artery. And this artery supplies blood and nutrient flow to not just your ovaries, but also to your uterus. So it can impact follicular quality as well as egg quality and uterine receptivity for lining support. And Chinese medicine is customized for each patient, but our Chinese herbs can really help patients regulate their cycles, balance their hormones, and really optimize their menstrual cycle so that they will not only know when to try, but it will also optimize the hormones throughout the different phases of your cycle. So the follicular phase, we're really focusing on egg quality, follicular development, really working on helping the follicles mature and develop. And then during the ovulation phase, we're helping to support a nice, strong ovulation. And then in the luteal phase, which is the latter phase of our cycle, we are really working on balancing your hormones, really supporting progesterone so that if your egg is fertilized, there could be a nice, healthy implantation. So those are very common, basic questions. One of the questions that I get from all of my new patients is, how long should I prepare my body before I start trying? So we meet patients at many different phases along the journey. And of course, in an ideal situation, I would love to meet patients at least 2 to 3 months before they start trying. But the reality of our practice is that a lot of patients are joining us in the middle of a cycle. Perhaps they just started an IVF cycle, or maybe unfortunately they had an unsuccessful cycle and they want to do something different. And so acupuncture is oftentimes recommended by their fertility clinics as something that can help reduce stress and anxiety while you're going through this process, as well as help to optimize your fertility and potentially improve egg quality and embryo quality. So I really think for patients, I always tell them it's never too late to start acupuncture or Chinese herbal medicine. We meet you where you're at along your journey, and we hope that we can provide not just fertility support, but overall support for your health and well being. How often should I receive acupuncture treatments while I'm going through IVF? This is a really great question. I I typically recommend that patients come in once or twice a week. And if a patient is really struggling with their antral follicle count, or they're really wanting to focus on improving their egg quality, then we generally recommend patients come at least twice a week. If patients are going through an egg retrieval cycle, there are so many things that we recommend that you could do at home as well. Red light therapy is one of the newer technologies that has now been introduced in our practice as an adjunct to acupuncture, but it is also something that patients can do on their own at home as well. So this is something that can aid their treatments. So aside from getting acupuncture, they can also do red light therapy at least 2 to 3 times a week is ideal. So, as far as I see a question here, receiving acupuncture during IVF, absolutely. 2 to 3 times is ideal during a retrieval process. And then in the transfer phase, or when you're preparing for a frozen embryo transfer, patients then usually drop their treatments down to maybe once a week. I kind of have this magic number that I like to see patients. I like to see them at least 4 times from the start of their FET process until their transfer. And one of the very popular times that we will treat patients is on the day of embryo transfer. So some of the fertility centers that we work with actually allow us to go on site to treat on the day of embryo transfers. So this is based on the Paulus protocol, which is a research study that was published in Fertility and Sterility about over 20 years ago. And this was a study that was done in Germany. There was 160 patients in this research study. 80 of the patients received acupuncture 25 minutes before and 25 minutes after embryo transfer. And then the non-acupuncture group or control group did not receive acupuncture at all. And this was a randomized trial. Patients were between the ages of 28 and 42. And mind you, this was over 20 years ago. So this was a fresh transfer. And out of the patients, the 80 patients that received acupuncture 25 minutes before and after embryo transfer, their clinical pregnancy success rate was over 42%, which is pretty significant. And the non-acupuncture group, their pregnancy rate was about 26%. So when this study was released in Fertility and Sterility in 2002, it was one of those studies that kind of made all the reproductive endocrinologists go, ooh, there's something about acupuncture. And so that's kind of how acupuncture got popular for fertility support around IVF cycles. So now things have changed. We are able to do so many different things. We still provide acupuncture on the day of embryo transfer. That's a very popular visit that we can support for our local patients in Orange County. However, there's so many different things we can do. Some of our patients are seeing doctors that are further away. Maybe they're in San Diego, maybe they're in Los Angeles or West LA. So patients will come to see us like the evening before their transfer and maybe after their transfer on their way home. So there's so many different things that we can do, so many variations. But the main thing that we're really focusing on is uterine receptivity, calming and relaxing the nervous system so that the transfer can go smoothly. That is also a very popular treatment time for our patients. And then we generally will see patients 3 to 7 days after their transfer, depending on what their bed rest schedule is like. So every reproductive endocrinologist has a different protocol. Some doctors say just rest for 2 days, take it easy, and then you can go back to work and go about your merry way after that. Other doctors are a little bit more conservative and they may recommend 3 days of bed rest and 2 to 3 days of what I call house arrest. So whenever that time frame is that you're allowed to leave your home, we generally will see patients. Oftentimes we're the first person that patients see is for acupuncture after their transfer. And this treatment is really focused on implantation support. So hopefully I answered that question about how much acupuncture you should get during your IVF cycle. So, can you receive acupuncture during pregnancy? That's a very great question. And yes, absolutely. I always joke with my patients that you don't get rid of us that quickly. Once you get pregnant, we continue to see you on a weekly basis throughout your first trimester. And we really enjoy this treatment. It's such a sacred time to help patients through this first trimester to just really calm the anxiety, calm the stress, and really just support them through the first several weeks of their pregnancy. And then after the first trimester and the second trimester, usually patients are feeling really good. First trimester patients are struggling with fatigue, nausea, a host of GI issues that we can really help with. And then in the second trimester, patients are usually feeling really great. So in that time frame, we will usually drop treatments down to maybe once or twice a month, and then we'll pick back up in the third trimester so that we can help patients with labor preparation and with labor prep and just getting them ready for their delivery process. So let's see, is there any other questions that are coming up here? Oh, this is a great question. What can acupuncture do to reduce the effects of fertility medications? Now, this comes up quite a bit. Some of the side effects of medication can be hot flashes, unfortunately, mood swings, and low energy. So, acupuncture is infamous for helping with reducing cortisol or stress hormones, which can be very effective for mood support, and then also with balancing out your hormones to help with climatic changes or hot flashes. Let's see, how can acupuncture, Chinese medicine, and functional medicine help with male fertility issues? This is a great question. So, just like Chinese medicine is helpful for reproductive health for women, there are Chinese herbal formulas that can specifically help with male factor issues. So there are Chinese herbs that can help with sperm volume, sperm quality, as well as motility. And so I have a formula that I created called Men's Fertile Seed that is based on a classic Chinese herbal formula called Wu Wan, which is the 5 seed pill. And this was a formula that the emperors in China used to take. Of course, they were really into having lots of children and leaving a legacy. So this is a modification off of that formula, and these herbs really help to balance out the hormones for men. And also, there's herbs in there that can help reduce stress and also increase libido as well. And as far as functional medicine, oftentimes we're so focused on women that men are sort of not looked at as closely. And I feel bad for guys. I don't want to ignore the men. So in functional medicine, we really want to look at how is everyone's overall health, right? So beyond just a semen analysis, we want to make sure that men are healthy. Do they have normal blood pressure? Are their cholesterol levels in normal range? Are their blood sugar and hemoglobin levels also in normal range as well? So sometimes a semen analysis might be the first test that our male partners, have done in a long time. A lot of them haven't gone to a primary care doctor for years. And so if a semen analysis comes back with some issues, whether it's a volume issue or a morphology problem, it is oftentimes an indicator that there are other health issues that are coming up for them. There might be some other things that need to be addressed, like hypertension or high cholesterol or prediabetes is a common one as well. So, as far as some of the dietary recommendations for functional medicine as well as for Chinese medicine, we really want to look at decreasing inflammation as much as possible for both men and women. So, some of the inflammatory foods include gluten grains, dairy products, as well as nightshade vegetables, which are tomatoes, potatoes, bell peppers, and eggplant. And those can create more inflammation in the body. And some of the signs of inflammation can be painful menstruation, maybe low back pain, headaches, digestion issues. Those are very common symptoms of inflammation, skin issues, eczema, hives that come and go. So we really want to be mindful about our diet and what we're putting into our bodies for both men and women. Some of the other functional medicine tests that are really common that kind of pair well with the diet and lifestyle changes in functional medicine would be food sensitivity testing, because it's really tough to know what our bodies are sensitive to. There's food allergy testing, which is considered a type 1 food reaction test, which is considered an IgE test that most of the allergists run for you. These are basically immediate onset allergic reactions. So you might eat peanuts or have shellfish and your throat will close up. You'll break out in hives. You'll have shortness of breath. That's considered a food allergy type 1 reaction. There's a second type of food sensitivity called an IgG food sensitivity test. And this is something that occurs in a delayed response. So it's not going to occur right away. It might happen hours after you've been exposed to a food or days later. And this is a type of food sensitivity that can affect patients with chronic conditions, whether it's an autoimmune condition or a chronic skin problem, psoriasis, hives, gut health issues. These are oftentimes linked to food sensitivity. So one of the functional medicine tests that I recommend for these types of patients with chronic GI problems and skin issues that are going through fertility, it's definitely a food sensitivity test. So, other things that we look at in our diet in Chinese medicine is we look at our body's constitution. So, we all have a certain type of constitution, a certain type of body temperature. So, for those of us that run cold, we always have cold hands and feet, our basal body temperature runs lower. We want to stick to warm foods. So, warm foods in Chinese medicine would include things like bone broth, ginger, turmeric. Those are warm herbs. And we want to stay away from cold foods. Cold foods would be things like iced beverages, things like ice cream, dairy products, things straight out of the refrigerator. We want to make sure that we eat foods or drink drinks that are room temperature, and also eat vegetables that are cooked or lightly cooked are much easier on our digestive system. So if you think about it, it's very logical to me. Our body is 98.7 degrees, and if you're introducing something cold, our body has to work extra hard to warm up the food and break it down and digest it and absorb the nutrients that we need for our bodies, and then uh, you know basically submit the rest of it to your GI system for elimination. So why not make it easier for our bodies by introducing something that's room temperature or warm? So in Chinese medicine, when we're trying to get pregnant, we always talk about keeping the womb warm. So we're really big on soups and congee and herbs that are warming. Ginger soups and our bone broth, red dates and goji berries can be added to your bone broths as well. Those are really, really great for fertility, and also something you can just make after your menstrual cycle, because these herbs help to tonify your qi and your blood. So, what are some recommendations in reducing stress and anxiety in TCM? This is a great question. So, aside from acupuncture and acupressure that you can do on your own, this is something that we include in our treatment protocol for our patients, is a couple of acupressure points to do on your own at home between treatments, like for example, yin tong or third eye. This is a great point to relax your mind, calm your mind. It's good for headaches and allergies. And it also helps to stimulate the pituitary gland, which is the powerhouse of all our hormones. Some of the other things to reduce stress besides acupressure and acupuncture, I love meditation. I think meditation, qigong, and yoga can be so helpful for patients, even if it's only for 10 to 15 minutes at the beginning of your day. It helps to set the tone for your day. Guided meditations. There's so many great apps out there. And as I mentioned, there in my fertility healing journey, there is a Spirit Baby guided meditation that I've shared. And so there's so many apps out there. The podcast app on Apple has a bunch of free podcasts. There's one called the Guided Meditation Podcast app. There's also Meditation Oasis by Mary Maddox. That's one of my favorite ones. They're all free, so you can go check them out. Qigong is also another favorite thing of mine to recommend for patients, and you can find many, many Qigong specialists on YouTube. And for yoga, I really enjoy Yoga with Cassandra on YouTube. I found her during the pandemic, and she's really great. She has 10-minute vignettes. Either she has like morning yogas or bedtime yogas that can help reset your body and keep your body in a nice, calm state. Let's see, any other questions that I might have missed? Let me see here. I think I've answered most of them. One thing I did want to mention that comes up a lot with my fertility centers that I work with is, are Chinese herbal formulas safe to take while you're in an IVF cycle, or is it something that's recommended? So, this is what I say to my patients and the doctors that I work with. If a patient is on a break from a cycle, or if they're getting ready for a cycle, maybe they're 2 to 3 months out before they're going to start their first IVF egg retrieval cycle, then acupuncture and Chinese herbs, I'm all in. Chinese can be so for egg quality, for stress reduction, and for digestion support. So I highly recommend patients if for some reason, and unfortunately you've had an unsuccessful cycle, maybe your PGT testing didn't come back with any normal euploid embryos, I highly recommend incorporating Chinese herbs if you can for 2 to 3 months before you enter another cycle. So once you start an IVF cycle, my agreement with the fertility centers that I work with is to discontinue any Chinese herbs. You can continue taking your nutrients and your supplements and antioxidants. Those are all perfectly safe to take during an IVF cycle. So Chinese herbs can be very beneficial. I believe that it's safe to take during IVF. However, because IVF is such a controlled environment and we are, really mindful about what your estrogen and progesterone levels, all your hormone levels are at, that we really want to be careful with what we're giving our patients. Because although Chinese herbs are not hormones, they do have properties to help encourage the production of more estrogen and progesterone. So that's a great question and a very common one that comes up. Chinese herbs actually come in many forms. There are capsules, which are probably the easiest way to take them. Tinctures are a liquid form extract that are pretty potent that come in a dropper. A lot of our patients prefer to take that form because they're already taking so many supplements and so many pills. So they want to break from taking pills. And then there's also powder or granule form. And lastly, there's decoctions, which these are the raw form of herbs that you brew and cook on your own at home for hours on end. I usually don't prescribe these just because they're tough to manage. But there's so many other options out there. Are Chinese herbs safe to take while breastfeeding? Yes, Chinese herbs can be taken during breastfeeding. We have specific herbs for breastfeeding. So one of the formulas that we created is called gushing milk, and that's part of our Revive Chi formula line. And just like it sounds, it helps with lactation. It helps to boost your prolactin and your breastfeeding hormones. And it can really be helpful when moms are starting to see their milk production dip. I've noticed that a lot of my patients that return to work, they tend to have less milk production during that time, or they start noticing a trail off because they're not able to feed the baby as often and they're pumping more than nursing. So gushing milk is a great formula that you can also add in conjunction with like fenugreek, for example. So these are all some really great questions. So let's see if there's anything else that we haven't covered here. Oh, here's a question that oftentimes comes up for my patients that are recommending acupuncture for their friends or family that might live, out of state or in a different city. How do you find an acupuncturist that specializes in fertility, perinatal care, and women's health? This is a really great question because we are kind of our own specialty. And although a lot of clinics say they do fertility acupuncture, you really want to be careful with who you choose. So there is a fellowship organization that I'm a part of called ABORM, which stands for the American Board of Oriental Reproductive Medicine. And all of us have done extra training. We've taken a board exam, and it's a whole fellowship program that we have been involved in specifically for fertility treatments for Chinese medicine. And so the Faborum is the fellowship of the American, or I'm sorry, we are considered Faborums or the fellows of the American Board of Oriental Reproductive Medicine. And so these folks are the ones that specialize in fertility. And if you're looking for a directory to find an acupuncturist, you definitely want to look at their website. So the website is, excuse me, aborum.org. And we'll make sure that we include it in the chat as well. Excuse me. But this is a great place to look for a fertility acupuncturist. And it's a directory that you can just search by the city or by the zip code. So that's where I send everybody to go if they're looking for an acupuncturist in the area. Excuse me. So yes, are there any other questions that I can answer? Let's see. So again, the website is aborm.org. And this is a great organization directory that's not just national, it's actually an international organization. So check it out. I think I have never had an issue when I've referred patients to acupuncturists that are part of this fellowship program. So I rely on it heavily when some of my patients that maybe are seeing me virtually need an acupuncturist that is closer to their home. This is the directory that I recommend for patients to find their fertility acupuncturist. So I think this is all of the questions that have come up during our IG Live and our YouTube Live. I just want to thank everybody for taking the time tonight to join me. I hope that this information was informative for everybody, and we will be announcing the winner for the guided meditation. I think we've taken down everyone that's joined, so hopefully you will be the lucky winner. All right, everybody, thank you so much. And we look forward to connecting with you soon. Feel free to reach out. Our website is revivechi.com and our Instagram. Thank you.